Hey everyone, Rick Albert here. Part two of Do I Rent It or Do I Sell It? Let's talk about selling. Okay, so I have this property, two bed, two bath in Tarzana. My tenants have moved out. Currently, as I'm filming, they're doing the renovations, kind of like, touch up paint, replacing stuff, things like that. But I need to decide. I need to decide quickly. Do I rent it or do I sell it? So if you watched my last video, I talked about the rental comps. I talked about the pros and cons of keeping it as a rental. So now let's talk about the pros and cons of selling. So the first things first is I need to get an idea of what it might be worth, right? So I got to take a look at comps. I got to take a look at all of that. Then I also have to factor in a lot of the other things that people don't think about. So let's start with the price. So let's take a look at some comps. Okay, so I pulled up some relevant comparable sales. With condos, it's very difficult to really pinpoint and say, well, this sold for X, therefore I can get X. The reason being is because every complex is different. Some people will pay a premium to be in certain complexes over others. Then when you dig into the complex, different locations can be a big deal. So for example, my condo is on the south side. What's great about that is I don't really have neighbors off my balcony. So I have a little bit more privacy. I can, it's further away from some of the noise. It's also, but at the same time, it's close to parking. Either way, point being is every condo is different. So therefore I can only really do like a range of what it might sell for. So first things first, let's take a look at some of these comparable sales. This first one up is sold for $435,500. Two bed, two bath. So very similar to mine, similar size. This one has a bigger balcony because it's on the first floor, but that also means it doesn't have the high ceilings, right? Because mine has high ceilings in the living room. So again, pros and cons, plus depending, this actually looks to be in somewhat of a private area. So that's actually really good to know. Those furniture is called virtual staging. So that's really actually what it looks like. But overall, it looks fairly clean. Now, here's the caveat. This sold in February. That was pretty much 6 months ago. Most appraisers like to look within the last 3 months. Once you hit 6 months, although they'll consider it if they have to, they start to realize, okay, the market has changed, right? Even though interest rates have dropped, we've seen some price reductions, but not necessarily in the ultra affordable range. And believe it or not, this is considered to be in the affordable range now for Los Angeles. So it's just something to consider. Now, what's also interesting is this one that sold later on in the year in the same complex. This was a two bed, one bath, second floor like mine. So it has the vaulted ceilings. Doesn't have the privacy like mine does, and it's dated. It needs a new kitchen. Not everyone's really into carpeting, right? I've had listings with carpeting and I got major pushback for it. So it needs a little bit of love. It's short a bathroom, and that's sold for $440. So that's actually a really good comp, and it's telling me that even though the other one sold back in February, here we are 2 months later and the market's showing signs of improvement, even though interest rates have been going up. Now, because we're not going to dig into each one, but what is interesting is that there have been some sales in the $500,000 range. The reason why this is important to note is because based off my last video where it's like, well, if I rent it out, I can wait a little bit. This tells me that the market is willing to pay more eventually in this neighborhood. People are willing to spend $500,000 for a 2-bedroom condo in Tarzana. So it's just a matter of time before, my complex ends up there as well. So this kind of gives us a range. Then the next thing I always like to look at is what is the competition? What is, what am I up against? So here is a list of all the 2-bed, 2-bath condos in both Tarzana and Encino. From an appraisal perspective, they may not look in Encino, but buyers will, right? A buyer in Encino will consider Tarzana and vice versa because inventory is fairly low. So my thought is, okay, this building right here, the 5460 White Oak, that building has a lot of deferred maintenance. That's why you're seeing such a big price difference versus literally everywhere else. So really, the lowest priced condo on the market outside of 5460 is this one, which is on Hatteras at 475. It's also, this is 18620. This is the Park Tarzana, also has a lot of deferred maintenance. So typically that one, condos in that one either sit on the market or they take a big hit. So if I were to sell today, knowing what the comps are and seeing what's available, my strategy would actually be to undercut this here. So I'd probably go somewhere maybe in the 449 range, especially because, for example, this one that sold for 440 needed work and was short a bathroom. I can go back and say, look, for just 9 grand more, right? So because I'm factoring in market conditions, knowing interest rates have gone up, it's like 9 grand more to get an extra bathroom and it's in better shape. Chances are, if I were to go to the open market, it might sell within that range, maybe potentially higher. Or I would be open to selling it off market, locking it up and just moving on. The reason why is because one of the downsides to selling a vacant unit is your carrying costs. So we know that it might take 2 weeks for a unit to sell. Then once under contract, that's another 30 days. Plus the 1.5 to 2 weeks for any sort of renovations or just getting it prepped for sale. That's 2 months of vacancy. So when you have those costs, let's call it around 2 grand a month, now I've just added on $4,000 in expenses versus a rental market can move a lot faster. So that's kind of the only downside to really selling. Then of course, I have to decide, where do I invest the money? So if I choose to sell, I need to do what's called a 1031 exchange. That's when I take all the profits that I would make, instead of being taxed on it, which is typically what happens, and that could be anywhere from, let's call it 30 to 40%, I can, what's called defer, meaning I'm basically putting off paying those taxes by taking that lump sum and reinvesting it in another property. Now, the good news is I can reinvest it in a different asset class. So this is a condo, I could buy an apartment building. I also don't have to stick with California. I could reinvest in Texas, Alabama, Colorado. It doesn't matter. As long as it's considered to be like kind, which is another real estate asset, I'm good to go. Now, a couple other caveats I have to factor in is whatever I sell the unit for, I have to invest the same amount of money. So if I sold it for $459,000, I need to spend at least $459,000. And the guidelines also state I have to have the same loan amount. So if, let's say my loan amount, I have to take a look between my main first and the HELOC might be in the range of, let's call it 230, 250. So I would have to make sure that my loan amount's at least that, which is doable, right? There's plenty of markets out there. You go to lower price markets, right? Like some parts in the South, and you buy an apartment complex versus reinvesting in, maybe a house or a duplex in higher price markets. So these are things you have to think about. And these are the thoughts I'm having. So if you're thinking about selling, you need to have a plan on where that money goes. I'd love to get your thoughts. Comment below. This is where I'm at. I'd love to hear from you guys. Talk to you soon. I'll let you know what the verdict is.